Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back here with part two of, I suppose, my ideas and goals and dreams to attract investment into Celtic FC. As ever, I'll try and keep it short and sweet if I can. As I say, part two. I hope all possible Celtic fans out there will love these videos, and at the same time, as I appreciate all possible support. I'm making this in quite quick succession to my last one, simply because it's quite late since when the idea came to me and I finally decided what to do and stop procrastinating and had the opportunity to upload. It became quite late, so I thought I'd get on with it quite quickly. But yeah, I hope people out there enjoy it, and as ever, I'd love to read your comments, constructive criticism, or anything like that. And here goes. These are ideas number 11 to 20. So as ever, I'd love to hear from my fellow Celtic fans as to what you think, whatever ideas you have, and whether you agree or disagree with any of my thoughts or ideas or whatnot, and whether you have any of your own or whatnot. Anywho, without further ado, here you go. So number 11, I dream that the club will look into all possible ways to attract investment, all new ways, and think of any out-of-the-box sort of thinking, new ideas and things like that, that the club could do to attract investment. As long as they do it legally within the rules, so that the club doesn't get penalised or anything like that. Number 12, with momentum, I think that was another thing I was going to say for point number 11, but I can't quite remember it. Anyway, with momentum, I hope that the club can continue to attract investment, and the more investment the club gets, hopefully the more the momentum will continue with the brand value and things like of the club, and hopefully the more people. As I did mention this a bit in part one, but the more people check out on Google and YouTube and whatnot, help Celtic to trend, hopefully the more the club will be worth, and the brand value and things like that, and hopefully that will encourage all sorts of different investors, all possible investors. I'd love for like Cascade Investment, Berkshire Hathaway, Bridgewater, and even possibly even BlackRock and other companies. All sorts of big companies. Bit of a dilemma with BlackRock and others because of the situation between Israel and Palestine and the Middle East, obviously, but and the club's position on supporting Palestine, to be honest. But I'd love to see, like, instead of investing in wars and the weapons trade, I talked before about how I'd love for companies and investors generally and whatnot, just generally to invest in Italian football and Celtic instead of wars and things like that. Number 13, on that note, I forgot, I could have said in point number 6, I think, as I often say, like, I do talk a lot about how I'd love to have a partnership between Italian football and Celtic, and I think that, remember my train of thought, I think that that partnership could involve looking at ways to attract investment. So let's say Italian football has ideas in which they use to attract investment. They could share those ideas with Celtic and vice versa, so they can sort of learn from each other, basically, including how to attract investment, which is very important for a modern football club, because it means the club could have more money to invest in getting better players and possibly also developing the youth, and also, I suppose, from a less selfish point of view, looking at what the club does with, like, football for good. So the more money the club has, the more it has to do good as well. Number 14, as I say, it would be cool, I think, if companies were encouraged, instead of investing in wars. It reminds me of the biblical teaching, although, as I often say, I'm not a scholar or anything like that religious, but it does remind me of a biblical teaching which I've read someone say or type up a while back, which is swords into plowshares. So I think that's about how countries in the future will not go to war anymore, but they will invest in or work on on things together, which I think would be pretty cool if they worked on things like how to tackle natural disasters, or at least how to help victims of natural disasters and wars, and well, if there wasn't any wars, obviously they wouldn't need to that. But when there's situations like what happened recently in China, Japan, and places like that, which Celtic has a good relation with Japan. Quite a few good players have come from Japan for Celtic, and I think it'd be great for the club to fundraise for Japan. And maybe Japan is a nation which could invest in Celtic in return, but and work with the club on in terms of developing academies and things like that. But I'll say if instead of investing in wars and weapons trade and things like that, it'd be cool if people invested in things like medical care, helping victims of natural disasters, people who are going through natural disasters or things like that. Even tackling climate change and solving problems generally, and I think like swords into plowshares could be like swords into football instead. So instead of investing in wars, they could invest in Italian football and Celtic. Maybe I'm being naive, but that's just an idea I have. Number 15. Once again, I know I mentioned this in part one, but I think the point of getting that investment should be to reinvest. I hope that if the club does get loads and loads of money in investment, maybe even billions, trillions, if I'm really dreaming, but I may dream here. But if the club does get loads and loads of money, especially for a Scottish club, compared to how much money most Scottish clubs get, I dream that they'll invest maybe 10% into, that's what I'm saying, into buying better players, 10% into youth development academies and things like 7-a-side pitches and things like that. Or even 5, 6, and 7-a-side pitches and things like that, academies, stadiums, and whatnot, and 10% into like marketing, branding, and that kind of thing. And half of that money, which would be 5% of the overall total that the club has, could be spent on CSCs, Celtic Sports Clubs, and then another 10% can go to the foundation. So that would be, I think, 40%, and 60% could go to like shareholders, equity holders, and that kind of thing to encourage more to invest. And I think doing the good work the club does hopefully will increase its PR and things like that, and give a good image for the club. So hopefully they'll be rewarded through gaining popularity and things like that, and lots of fans, which hopefully will spend money on the club and bring in that money. But I think that money should be reinvested into those things. Again, I'd love to read any views that Celtic fans have, whether they're contrarian or whether they agree with me on how the money should be reinvested. I mean, I suppose if they did invest like that now, it wouldn't be a huge amount, because I think there's 70 million in the bank. But if there was lots of money, like hundreds of millions or even billions, I think it would be pretty cool to see that investment. But again, if people think I'm being naive, then please let me know as well. Number 16, I'd love to say for them to look into all possible ways, all possible ideas, what they could learn from other clubs, what ideas people could share. Again, if they have a partnership with Italian football, and maybe talk to potential investors and talk about what those investors want and what would make them invest in the club. Listening to investors, maybe even the club could host events which invite Fortune 500 companies, sovereign wealth funds, and any potential investors, investing organisations or whatnot, to Celtic Park to talk about what sort of things would encourage them to invest in the club, what sort of things they would like to see, and that kind of thing too. So it's like what's in it for them. So hopefully that would encourage them to invest in the club. Number 17, as I say, if I'm really dreaming, I'd love to see the club have like trillions of pounds. But I know people say there's too much money in football and that's greedy and things like that, and footballers are overpaid. But if they do a lot of good work for charity in Asian and African nations and Latin America and all over the world, including in Scotland itself, including in Glasgow, helping victims of floods, helping homeless and disabled people and other disadvantaged groups and people and things like that, offering training, opportunities for people to get training so they can get jobs and things like that. I think from disadvantaged backgrounds, all sorts of things like that, I think that that money would be used for good. Number 18, as I say, I hope that that the club will be rewarded for the football for good that they do, and the more money they get, again, I hope the more they can be involved in football for good. I hope that would encourage investors to reinvest. At number 19, and some of the things the club could do is helping are things like helping Indigenous Africans and Australasians in software development, and number 20, also in STEM, and helping young people to get training, especially in developing nations. So again, they can help those economies, help to create businesses and jobs and things like that. And I know the last two weren't really, or even the last three or so weren't necessarily specific ways to attract investment or whatnot, but I thought I'd include them anyway. But yeah, I'd love to know what you think. How could the club attract more investment? Who do you think could be persuaded to invest in the club? Do you think the club should invite multi-millionaires, billionaires, especially the latter, and potential investors generally, Fortune 500 companies, and Cascade Investment, Berkshire Hathaway, Bridgewater, and others like that, and sovereign wealth funds, hedge funds, and all sorts, and banks, basically anyone who invests. Do you think the club should invite them to Celtic Park, or even perhaps at least talk to them on Zoom, or maybe a bit of both? I'd love to know what you think. I'm going to stop baffling. I think I did fairly well at keeping this one a little bit shorter. I suppose not as much shorter as I would like, or in better English. But anyway, I'm going to stop baffling, and peace and love. I'm out.